You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Good morning. Welcome to Catholic Chicago on WNDZ 750 AM, 312-255-8408, 312-255-8408. Also get us on youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. Father Greg Sakowitz, the rector of the cathedral, co-host Mark Teresi, still for one more week.
One more week.
The executive director of the cathedral, but then Mark is not leaving us. He'll be doing part-time other work in ministry. So how are you today, Mark?
Very good, very good. Beautiful day, a little fall, nice fall day.
It is fall, but did you realize that by next Wednesday, Thursday, around 90?
Oh, really?
On both days,
Yeah.
Wednesday and Thursday. We're talking a beautiful Memorial Day weekend, but as much as we have the holiday on Monday, we remember those who have given up their lives for freedom of our country, all that we have for freedom. We can't lose sight of that.
No, and check online Catholic cemeteries, because there are masses, memorial masses, almost at every cemetery, the Catholic cemetery.
A long-standing tradition,
Right.
Rain or shine,
Right.
the Mass goes on. We have a great program lined up again, 312-255-8408. Also on youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. Dr. Shannon D. Williams is Associate Professor of History at the University of Dayton. She's an award-winning scholar of the African American experience and Black Catholicism, with research and teaching specializations in women's religious and Black freedom movement history. Dr. Williams is also the author of Subversive Habits, the first full history of Black Catholic nuns in the United States. Joining us via Zoom for the first half hour of today's program is Dr. Shannon D. Williams. Dr. Williams, welcome to the program this morning. How are you, Doctor? Are you with us? She's not there. Okay, we're still waiting to get a hold of Dr. Williams there.
Well, you didn't give while we're waiting, on not frivolous, but give your Sox report. They're doing pretty well now.
Yeah, the White Sox are 8 out of the last 11. They were won 7-21, 14-28. This morning, 21-30. And the only reason they're 5.5 games out of first place, though they're 9 games under 500, is because the Minnesota Twins lead the division at 26-24.
Oh.
It's a very weak division. But the Cubs are holding their own. They're 22-26.
We're going tonight.
4.5.
My wife and I are going tonight to the game. Our son gave us
Against
a
the
gift.
Mets?
Yeah, our son gave us a gift.
They go for the sweep.
I think it was Mother's Day.
That is wonderful. In fact, it's amazing how the Cubs, even the month of May, draw so well. Like 36,000 2 nights ago. Last night, over 33,000. They'll fill it up again, or almost fill it up again this evening. And last night was cold.
Yeah, I'm wearing my parka.
In fact, yeah, it's supposed to be a little bit warmer today, but last night was a very, very cold evening.
They're going to be serving warm beer.
Exactly, warm beer for the game. And so the thing is, but also for those that love hockey, I know Brian Hockey Hitman Brock, one of our producers, I don't see him right now. The Florida Panthers swept the Hurricanes yesterday, and they were the last place to get into the playoffs, beat Boston, and then beat Toronto, beat Carolina, and it's just an amazing Cinderella story. But the way the Cubs and the Sox, here's the thing, the White Sox were expected to win. On paper, they've got a very good team.
Right.
Where the Cubs are rebuilding plus, which means people are having some expectations. This kid, Morel, is hitting like crazy. He had 5 games in a row, tied the record with Sammy Sosa for consecutive games back to back to back to back. He was snapped last night, but the kid's hitting about 358 and having a tremendous year. But, it's fun. as long as the teams can be competitive, because in the winter, the Bears, nothing. The
Right.
Bulls, really nothing. The Blackhawks, nothing.
But it is interesting with the Cubs, whether they're competitive or not, they're filling the stadium.
Okay, I think we have with us, that was enough of our sports report.
Yes.
And I think we now have Dr. Shannon D. Williams, the author of Subversive Habits, the first full history of black Catholic nuns in the United States. Are you there with us there, Dr. Williams? Good morning.
Good
I
morning.
am, yes. Good morning. Thank
Welcome
you so
to-
much for having me on.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Shannon. You are calling from where?
From Dayton, Ohio.
From Dayton, Ohio. But you were born where?
I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, and baptized in the diocese
Of Memphis, Tennessee. And the thing is now, and you've got a tremendous background with degrees and writing. And in fact, I was just looking at the book before the program with Mark Teresi. Hold it up.
Let me show the book.
Hold up the book. Subversive Habits. And it's quite an incredible,
There it is.
intense,
Sure is.
comprehensive study. And I have to ask this first question. In all the areas you could have chosen to write, how did you choose upon this area?
You know, I think it's better for me to say I didn't choose the topic, it chose me.
Mhm.
I am Catholic. I was born and raised Catholic. I'm also the daughter of the first Black woman to graduate from the University of Notre
I saw
Dame.
that.
Wow.
However, I did not know that Black nuns existed in our church until I entered graduate school. In fact, the only Black sister that I knew was Sister Mary Clarence, who was
Oh.
a fictional character played by Whoopi Goldberg
Right.
in the Sister Act film franchise.
Yeah.
However, when I went to graduate school, I was looking for a paper topic for my seminar in African American history and stumbled upon a newspaper article announcing the formation of the National Black Sisters Conference, which was a Black Power Federation of Catholic nuns established in wake of the assassination of Dr. King in 1968. And I experienced what I can only call a metanoia, saw Black nuns for the first time, and wanted to learn more. So I say that it was not necessarily chance, but more so providential serendipity that I came to study this topic.
Now, here's a line that I've used many times, Shannon, on the program. Someone could say, oh, what a coincidence how you came upon that topic to the article. A coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. It's a wonderful, wonderful definition or understanding. Mark, you had a question.
Yeah, why do you feel you were chosen?
You know, had no interest in pursuing a topic in Black Catholic history when I went to graduate school. I didn't know much about Black Catholic history outside of my own family's history. I was really interested in Black religious women's contributions to the Black freedom struggle, but Catholicism was not on my radar whatsoever, even though I am Catholic. But it came to me, and I mean that very literally. I wasn't looking for it, but as soon as I came on the topic, everything fell into place. The first sisters and ex-sisters that I contacted said yes. And then really when I was able to find and commit to an interview, Dr. Patricia Gray, who was Sister M. Martin de Porres Gray, who was the chief architect of the National Black Sisters Conference, someone who had not talked for over 50 years or nearly 50 years about her experiences in religious life. When she said yes, everything opened up for me. So I really do have to sort of cite the intervention of God in my own life. I say this also because I was actually on my way out of the Catholic Church. I had one foot outside of the church, the church of my birth. And as soon as I came to this project, I was right back in. Never left, but I just didn't know. And as soon as I began to sort of have those concerns or questions about maybe I needed to find another place, I came to the project. So I have to sort of attribute that to God's intervention in my own life.
And that drew you right back in again. No,
Absolutely.
that's one.
Absolutely.
Two quick questions, Shannon. Who were the first Black religious sisters in the United States here? In what year? And all the research you did, because the book is so comprehensive. My God, it's incredibly well done. What story can you share with our listeners that just so touched your heart, that just fired you up about the book or further research?
Absolutely. So to answer that first question, We know that the first Black women to profess vows in religious life did so in Kentucky in 1824 as a part of an auxiliary unit to the Sisters of Loretto, which is one of the first two Catholic sisterhoods to have a U.S. foundation. But the reality is, we cannot say for certain who the nation's first Black Catholic sister was. The realities of racial passing and archival erasure mean that we may never know who she is. What we do know, though, is that the first known Black women and girls who we can document profess religious vows were not the first to seek admission into religious life. And that is something that is important to understand with the history of Black nuns in the United States. We do not get a successful inauguration of Black women's religious life in the United States without the formation of historically Black communities, the congregations, the first, not only in the nation, but also in the modern Atlantic world, are the Oblate Sisters of Providence that are founded in Baltimore in 1829. But they are not the first Black women to seek admission into religious life. We have examples of sisters attempting to go into the Ursuline Sisters as well as into the Society of the Sacred Heart, over a decade before the Oblate Sisters of Providence are successfully established in Baltimore. But of the stories that I have collected over the year, and I've collected over 100 oral history testimonies of current and former sisters, I would say probably the story that I frame my book with, and that is of Sister Mary Antona Ebo. Outside of the three African-American sisters who are currently on the road to sainthood in our church, who are Mother Lange, the foundress of the Oblate Sisters of Providence, Venerable Henriette DeLille, who is the foundress of the Sisters of the Holy Family in New Orleans, and Sister Thea Bowman, who was the first and only African-American Franciscan sister of perpetual adoration. I think Sister Mary Antona Ebo is probably the fourth best known, in part because she is a member of the inaugural delegation of Catholic sisters to go to Selma, Alabama in 1965 and protest for voting rights. And her story is important because we can trace Sister Mary Antona from, in terms of sort of her formal civil rights protest activities, from Selma in 1965 to Ferguson. Although we had hundreds of Catholic sisters and priests who marched in Selma, and then several hundred more who marched in Selma sympathy demonstrations across the country, Sister Mary Antona Ebo is the only Catholic person in religious life to go to Ferguson and call for systemic change before a crowd of reporters. So we can trace that lineage there, although, as I note in my book, her story is far more comprehensive when we turn our attention also to the church. Sister Mary Antona Ebo is a member of that pioneering generation of Black women and girls who desegregate the nation's historically white sisterhoods after World War II. She will, in fact, have a very difficult journey in her own community. But what's so important about her story and the story of so many of Black sisters, whether they are members of Black sisters and white sisterhoods, Black communities or white sisterhoods, is that so many of these women broke profound barriers in religious life and in the nation that we just don't know about. So I think her story in particular stands out to me because she also becomes the first Black sister that we know to direct a Catholic hospital. And so on, that they're always breaking these barriers, these monumental racial and gender barriers that make them, who I argue are to be forgotten freedom fighters.
Shannon, you are amazing. Yeah. We're going to go to a timeout here. Go ahead, Mark.
We're going to take a little break. WNDZ 750 AM, Catholic Chicago, 312-255-8408. You can go to youtube.com/Catholic Chicago with Dr. Shannon D. Williams. When we come back, Shannon, I was going to say Dr. Williams. Either way, that I'd like you to reflect a little bit on two things: Sister Thea Bowman, her role in the church, talking to the bishops, etc. And the other thing would be Bishop Perry was here talking about the obstacles he faced in the seminary in terms of obstacles toward ordination. So maybe we could talk about those two topics when we get back. We'll be back in a few minutes. Please stay tuned.
Caring adults make all the difference in the lives of adolescents. Catholic Charities understands this, and our mentorship programs provide a free opportunity for young adults to spend time with volunteers who genuinely care about them. This program is ideal for youth aged 9 through 12 who may need support navigating the challenges of childhood and early adolescence. Our amazing volunteers serve as friends who help youth recognize their strengths and empower them to reach their full potential. Catholic Charities conducts a thorough background check on every volunteer, and our program coordinator closely monitors and supports every relationship. Mentoring is a fun after-school program that can help young adults build confidence and enjoy fun activities with their peers, too. To learn more, visit CatholicCharities.net or call 312-655-7970 in Cook County and 847-782-4224 in Lake County. We're connecting youth with great role models. Join us today.
This is year 44 for me teaching. When I started here, there were teachers here that had taught me when I was a student. Now I'm the old person. Right now, I teach junior high math. I love when kids find what I'm teaching to be fun and they get it. I see that light bulb go off and it's a thrill. People are always amazed. What? You're here for 44 years? It's hard for me to believe, frankly. I love what I do. Every summer I think, oh, I miss the classroom. Even on the weekends, I think I can't wait to get back on Monday and teach those quadratic equations.
Shape the next generation of leaders. Teach. Apply today at archchicago.org/schooljobs.
Catholic Charities' Family Self-Sufficiency Program has assisted thousands of single parents who are working to become more self-sufficient through education and employment opportunities. Our experienced case managers accompany participants for up to 5 years on their journey to identify, address, and break down barriers to improving their quality of life and achieving meaningful goals for themselves and for their families. Professional, compassionate assistance is offered in a safe and trusting environment as participants develop the skills needed to become financially stable and able to support themselves. Every achievement starts with a decision to try. To learn more about Catholic Charities' Family Self-Sufficiency Program, call 847-782-4233 or visit CatholicCharities.net.
We're back, WNDZ 750 AM, Catholic Chicago, 312-255-8408. You go to youtube.com/Catholic Chicago with Dr. Shannon D. Williams, Associate Professor of History at the University of Dayton. Happens to be the alma mater of our daughter-in-law. She loved being at the University of Dayton.
That's a Dayton Flyer.
Yeah.
The Flyers.
So and let me just hold the book up again. The Subversive Habits, Full History of Black Catholic Nuns in the United States.
But now, Shannon, I got to ask you a question. You're Dr. Shannon D. Williams. Is D your middle name?
D is my middle name. It is the name of my father and my grandfather.
Oh,
so
beautiful.
we all, it's my sister and I, we have a variation of my father and grandfather's name in our middle names.
Because my mother's first name, D. D-E-E. So I love you already.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, what I was going to ask, I had the good fortune a while back to meet a woman named Mary Lou Jennings, who runs the Thea Bowman Foundation. And we've worked on some projects here in Chicago. The foundation exists in Thea Bowman's name. She asked her to start this foundation to educate college education for significant young black boys, women, and men who show that real academic potential. And she's a dynamo. She knew Thea personally. We were able to see that beautiful video where she's speaking in front of the USCCB. So I just thought, what was your experience as you discovered her presence as Black Catholic nun in leadership. Really, she was educating the bishops about what needed to be happening in the church. Can you reflect on that a little bit?
Absolutely. I've heard so many of Sister Thea's peers say the first miracle that Thea performed was at that very fateful 1989 bishops semi-annual meeting of the bishops, where she, at the end, gets them to stand up and hold hands and sing "We Shall Overcome."
Exactly.
Sister Thea, it's funny. Again, I did not know Black nuns existed. And again, I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, where Sister Thea is buried. I did not learn, obviously, of her existence until I came into and encountered the history of the National Black Sisters Conference, of which Sister Thea is a founding member. Her story, again, is so important for us and so significant as one of the 3 African-American sisters on the road to sainthood, because she, like Sister Mary Antonia Ebo, is a member of that pioneering generation of Black women and Black Catholic women and girls who desegregate white Catholic institutes, sisterhoods after World War II. And she goes in as a very young girl. She leaves home at 15. She is a convert to Catholicism, famously sort of waged a hunger strike when she, was trying to tell her parents like she was going to go into religious life. There was some concern leaving the South, going into a space where she was truly the only Black person, not only in her high school, but also in eventually the congregation, but even in the town of La Crosse, Wisconsin. So a very, very important story for us because she perseveres in religious life despite barriers, despite very difficult opposition to her presence in religious life in a community, but who goes on to earn a PhD in English from the Catholic University of America, where she teaches the institution's first course in African American literature, goes back, becomes an English professor at her institute's Viterbo College, which is now Viterbo University, then becomes the first African-American chair at the Institute, but eventually leaves, comes back to her home state of Mississippi, where she develops what some call her Ministry of Love, which was a revolutionary ministry that combined African-American historical truth-telling, teaching, speaking, dancing, in which she champions the intellectual and spiritual gifts of the African-American community. And what's really fascinating and important about that 1989 address to the bishops, Thea this time is 51 years old. She's stricken with terminal cancer. She's wheelchair bound, and she is nonetheless dynamic. She is calling upon the leaders of her church, her beloved church, to confront the ongoing challenges and barriers of racism and all forms of discrimination, and to embrace the gifts of the African-American community, including the Black Catholic community, as a way to heal, address, atone, but also to create a truly Catholic church. One statement that I love that Sister Thea always made was that she said, be who you are, be Black, be African-American, be Irish-American, be whoever you are, but be one in Christ. And that in itself is truly the prophetic gift and tradition of Black Catholics, who in the face of unholy discrimination had oftentimes, regardless of that discrimination, held on to the faith. And there was, I would argue, no one who was able to champion, articulate that beauty and the gift and the faithfulness of the Black Catholic community, unlike Thea. No one was able to do it like Thea, and was able to do it in a way that brought people together, and that was really, truly grounded in the faithfulness of Catholicism that I think is important.
Now, along those lines, Shannon, because you've done a beautiful job in on Sister Thea's life, talk about obstacles. I know that in the United States, for a young Black man years ago to want to enter the seminary was forbidden, was not allowed. Even at Mundelein Seminary here in Chicago, I think until the 40s, a young Black man could not go to Mundelein Seminary. What were some of the obstacles for young Black women wanting to pursue a religious life? What obstacles did they run into in this country, and until when? I mean, where there was real blood barriers.
So there were formal and informal anti-Black admissions policies where communities would not accept Black women. We do have examples of some communities making exceptions for African-descended women who were lighter skinned, who could pass either for white or simply non-Black, because communities would take Native American, they would take Latina women, they would also take women of Asian descent. So you didn't necessarily need to be able to pass for white, but just as something else. And that doesn't mean that those non-Black sisters did not encounter barriers, but Blackness becomes that chief barrier. It's not until the promulgation of the mystical body of Christ, 1943, and then really the impact of the global defeat of Nazism, that we begin to see white communities, with pressure always from the Black Catholic community, but an increasing number of white priests who minister in the African American community, putting pressure on communities to rethink the utility and morality of their policies. So in certain instances, we know the barriers that young Black women and girls who feel called to religious life and feel called to the charisms of white communities, oftentimes the communities of their educators, would face barriers such as, communities would sometimes only implement a token policy that they would only take one or two, a quota system will only take one or two. In the case of the Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament, founded by St. Catherine Drexel, when they are finally forced to take a vote to accept Black women and girls, they vote to only take two or three at a time, seemingly so that they would not have a Black majority. Sometimes communities will require young women to submit photographs with their applications. Sometimes they would have them take multiple medical tests to sort of see if there was anything that they could use to keep women out. Sometimes communities would not educate their Black members, and that was a way to sort of push women out of communities. Sometimes women were forced to live separately and in a segregated way from their white counterparts, pushing women out. In the case of Sister Mary Antona Ebo, her community built a separate novitiate for their Black candidates, enforced segregation in eating, dining, etc. They were even forced to profess their vows in a segregated ceremony, of which we have a photograph for. It could be any and everything. It's really difficult. I think the other thing that we have to remember, even if we talk about these barriers, we don't even know how many vocations that we lost, because so many of the women that I interviewed, they said, I didn't even submit a written application. I asked my teacher. I asked the visiting vocation director, and they told me no. So the rejection was oral. So there's no written documentation that it ever happened. We are
so many vocations were lost before it even started. Let alone, and then the barriers increase once you get into religious life. We wouldn't have a strong sense of the numbers without the really, really incredible surveys that were completed by a white Jesuit priest named Father Raymond Bernard, beginning in 1949. He began surveying, and he keeps it into the 50s before he leaves religious life in 1959. And he's very angry about these policies that he did not really know existed and how extensive they were. But in the 1950s, he conducts 3 national surveys of the policies with regard to the admission of what he called qualified Negro girls in communities in the United States. So we have a sense of how many we were losing every year. And there's one point in the 50s where we're losing hundreds every year of these women. So it could be anything, but it can also be very painful. Pioneering Black sisters have experiences of their counterparts not touching the glasses and plates that they use in the dining hall, refusing to sit with them, teach with them, get out of the pool when they get in the pool, burning bed sheets and mattresses rather than use them. So it's a very painful story, and it was a very painful story for a significant number of Black sisters who dared to enter into the communities, white communities, to whose charisms that they felt called. Now, Shannon, we're running out of time here. Before we close, I'm going to have Mark hold up the book. Where can people get a copy of your fantastic book?
So you can get a copy anywhere where books are sold, independent booksellers, Duke University websites, Duke University Press's website, but also on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, again, anywhere where books are sold. Do read the book. It tells the story of America's real Sister Act, which is a far more honest and compelling story than that of the story of Sister Mary Clarence.
Which was a great movie, and again, we want to thank you in a very
which
special way.
I love, right?
Yes, great singing there. Dr. Shannon D. Williams, Associate Professor of History at the University of Dayton, and the author of Subversive Habits through Duke University Press.
Could I ask
Mark?
Could you let people know how they can get in touch with you? Because I would imagine what you've got in this book could be a wonderful parish event.
Give us your website.
Absolutely. So my website is www.shannondwilliamsphd.com.
One more
You
time.
can
One more
Google
time.
me.
One more time.
www.Shannon, and Shannon is SHANNEN Williams PhD.com. I also tweet online at Black Nun Historian, both on Instagram and Twitter. And then you can Google me and find me just by my full name, just Shannon with an E-N.
Well, thank you very much to Dr. Shannon D. Williams for joining us. You've been fantastic,
Yes,
Shannon.
beautiful.
Your wealth of knowledge and your enthusiasm and passion is phenomenal. So thank you very much for joining us. God bless you and to the Dayton Flyers. And to want to thank our listeners for the first half. Don't go away. We've got a great historical program, part 2. Father Greg Sakowicz, Mark Teresi. You're listening to Catholic Chicago on WNDZ 750. You can also get us on youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. Stay with us. And again, do not touch that dial.
We are hiring. Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Chicago is looking for mission-driven individuals who want to help make a positive difference in the lives of people in need throughout Cook and Lake counties. Be part of a diverse, talented team of professionals in the largest human services organization in the Midwest. We are dedicated to helping people chart a more stable, happier future for themselves, and we accompany anyone in need, regardless of faith, gender, race, or ethnicity. Competitive salaries and generous benefits add to the satisfaction you'll have every day knowing that you're helping us amplify our impact in Chicago. To see our list of employment opportunities, visit CatholicCharities.net.
I am a seminarian.
The Church needs compassionate and well-trained priests to help guide each of us through life.
What inspires me, what draws me always to the priesthood is continue to see priests be a beacon of hope for other people.
You can play a part in the education of these young men as they prepare for a life of service to others.
I want to be that beacon of hope too, and it sets my heart on fire.
To support our seminarians, make your gift at archchicago.org/seminarian fund or call 312-534-7959.
The Cemetery Ministry is a core ministry of our Catholic faith tied to the corporal works of mercy. It's comforting to know that our Catholic cemeteries are caring for the remains of our loved ones awaiting the resurrection. There are 44 Archdiocese of Chicago Catholic cemeteries willing to help you in your time of loss. Call 708-449-6100 or visit CatholicCemeteriesChicago.org. Catholic Cemeteries, serving the Catholic community since 1837.
You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Thanks for letting us be part of your morning. Now again, Catholic Chicago.
Sure. Just let me know.
Welcome back to Catholic Chicago on WNDZ 750, 312-255-8408, 312-255-8408. You can also get us on youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. Father Greg Sakowicz, the rector of the cathedral, and executive director is Mark Teresi. Great first half program, but the second half will be close to our hearts, Mark. So
Yes.
Niles College Seminary of Loyola University educated and formed men for the priesthood in the Archdiocese of Chicago for 33 years, from 1961 through 1994. And during that time, witnessed great changes both in the church and in society. Now, researchers, alumni, and others interested in the seminary's history can learn more by examining a new collection at the Joseph CardinalBernardin Archives and Record Center. The Niles College Seminary collection includes everything from the rector's logbooks to yearbooks to photographs and newspaper articles about the seminary, which educated men in their undergraduate years for most of existence. Joining us in studio is archivist Charles Heinrich. Charles, welcome to the program this morning. This will be a great half hour. Welcome to the program, Charles.
Thank you very much for having me, Father Greg. It's a pleasure to talk about the archives, what the archives does, and about Niles College, about the seminary, the college seminary for the Archdiocese.
Anything in the archives about Father Greg's academic career at Niles College?
You know what? I have to be very careful in how I respond to this question.
If you hope to see your family again.
This is a soundproof room.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting, Charles, that you have two alum of the college seminary. I graduated class of 75 from Niles College Seminary. Mark, class of 77. So Mark and I have been friends now this fall. We met 50 years ago in the fall of 73 when I was a junior and Mark came out of Quigley, this building here, as a freshman. And then Mark and I, some years later, I joined the faculty when Father Bob McLaughlin was the rector. I was there from 85 to 92 as the vocation director, director of admissions. I taught theology, communications. Also, I was a dorm priest director. And Mark was dean of students. And what else you were?
Then went into community and relations and development.
Also, I did communications under the new rector in 1990, Father Cleet Kiley.
Right,
yes,
exactly.
And then I left in 92 to go to St. Mary of the Woods in Edgebrook as an associate. And Mark, I think you left in 93, the year before the closing?
You mean the move?
Yeah.
To St. Joe?
Exactly.
Yeah, the year before.
Now, what's interesting is Mark and I could spend an hour telling stories. We want to make sure you get into this, and that is the night before the wrecking ball came in 1994 or 1995 to knock the whole building down.
Okay.
My buddy Wayne Majors and I, having been in the neighborhood, we crossed through the fence. There was an opening. We walked through the whole building of Meyer and Stritch and the chapel, knowing that the wrecking ball was coming tomorrow morning. And we went into all the rooms. I reminisced, was talking to Wayne about this was that, this was my classroom, this was my dorm, and it was fun. But people forget, though, is, I'm sure, Charles, you'll go into this history, people forget it. The building began in 1910 as St. Hedwig's College, in St. Hedwig's Industrial Polish Orphanage from 1910 to 1961. And so I guess maybe we begin for you is, how did you get interested in this particular area of history, the college seminary?
Well, the college seminary is an important part of my family as well. I went to Quigley High School Seminary here, Quigley North, or at the time Archbishop Quigley Preparatory Seminary, both me and my older brother. And my brother went on to St. Joseph College Seminary, which was the successor of Niles College when it moved in 1994 to Loyola University's campus in Rogers Park. So I know a lot of friends both from Quigley and from St. Joseph College Seminary, that went through the seminary system. So I've always had that. But really, we had all of this material of the college seminary and from both the Quigleys, St. Joseph's, at the archives. And at a certain point, the director of the archives, Meg Hall, came to me and said, Charles, we have all of these boxes of historical records, institutional records of the seminaries, but no one's looked at them. No one's done anything with them, with Niles College now for over 30 years. We both had a discussion, and we wanted to do something that one would make people know that this material exists, that it's out there, and that it could be used, because before that point it had just been sitting in boxes, disorganized. No one had looked at them in decades, and it was also even scattered around. Some of it was still at the old St. Joe's building on Loyola's campus. I had to go out physically, collecting these records and things like that. And the goal was to make it so that the seminary people would understand a little bit more about the college seminary system, and really kind of the trailblazing path that Niles College took, one being like one of the early college seminary and junior college seminary systems, but not only for the city but beyond.
Well, and it broke it up from Quigley to Mundelein to Quigley to Niles, and then to, now I have a question. This is probably practical, and this might be helpful, very helpful to me. So our 50th is coming up here at Quigley soon. So you're in the archives, and want to get some stuff for the Quigley 50th. What do I do?
Well, you would contact the archives.
Can I call you directly right here?
You can talk to me right now, but we'll wait till after the program.
Okay, yes,
but no, you would contact for people. We get those types of requests all the time, either genealogical or student alumni requests. They contact the archives through our website or through our telephone. And, we often charge a nominal research fee to find this material, to crawl back into all the boxes and find what you're looking for. And then we try to, hook you up.
So that's good. And then after the show, we'll talk.
Now, along those lines is, in going through all these boxes in Charles, there had to be an incredible amount of material. And probably took you a long time to sort out or to organize.
Months.
In all that you went through, what were some of the most fascinating pieces you found?
I'm glad you asked that question. This was a real treat for me to look. It's always so wonderful to discover something entirely new and learn, because I had known about the college seminary and I had known about Niles. My pastors had went to Niles College, etc. But I think one of the most fascinating things I found were, you mentioned in the intro to the program, were the rector's log books. And the first rector of of Niles College, Monsignor Eugene Lyons, who you might remember and know, he started the practice, him and his staff, of keeping an almost, there are these big, thick bound volumes of almost like a day-by-day account of what was happening in the seminary.
Really?
Wow.
Letters between him and Cardinal Cody, all of the different, student publications. He collected all of this stuff, and you almost have like this very intimate look at what was happening inside the seminary.
What popped up as you were reviewing those journals? What popped up? What surprised you? Anything?
You know what? When Niles College was founded, it almost immediately was thrown into extreme flux. And that's very fascinating to me because it started in 1961. And then if you think about it, 1 year later, they go through all this trouble of creating the seminary rule, a rule for seminarians. But then Vatican II, the council happens, which throws everything up into the air. And then right around the corner, you have the huge social upheavals of the 1960s, the Vietnam War, the civil rights movements, all of the changes going on in Chicago. And the seminarians are right in the middle of all that. They're being absorbed by that, very chaotic culture, and the seminary, and the interplay between the seminarians themselves and the faculty, trying to keep a rein on this and trying to, in some ways shield the seminarians from their own actions and the wider culture around them is quite fascinating.
Another interesting story is that what people forget is when it began in 1961, it was a two-year college seminary. So you'd have the guys at Quigley, 2 years college seminary, those going on to the theology at Mundelein, St. Mary of the Lake. But in terms of just real history, I was saying this to Mark a few days ago, when I joined the faculty in 1985, it was the summer of 1986. I was waiting to get picked up on a Sunday or Sunday afternoon on Harlem and Touhy there, but I was by the old building called Chardin, which was a former convent in the days which was a Polish orphanage. And I was noticing a guy with one of those Geiger counters combing along the ground, looking for coins. And I said, geez, have you found anything interesting here when you comb the grounds here? He pulled out of his pocket a 1905 Indian nickel. So not the Buffalo nickel, which started, I think, in 1913, but the Indian nickel from 1905. So historically, if the building opened up as an orphanage in 1910, I know on those days, in the early days, every Sunday afternoon, families would come visit their children in the orphanage. So I can just imagine some mother or father lost a nickel on the lawn. He got buried under the surface. This guy found it 70 years later, a nickel like that. Also, Mark, you've got that fascinating story. In fact, save the story about the swimming pool.
Oh, yeah.
But now, Mark, take us to break.
Yeah, WNDZ 750 AM, Catholic Chicago, 312-255-8408. You go to youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. We'll be back with Charles Heinrich in a few minutes and talk about more of our Niles experiences. And I'd also like to throw some names at you and see what you learned in terms of your research. We'll be back in a few minutes. Please stay tuned.
Catholic Charities has had the privilege of helping people in need in Cook and Lake County for more than 100 years. We would like to take this opportunity to thank our frontline workers who, despite the unprecedented challenges of the past 2 years, continue to excel at their jobs every day. From the warehouse staff members who pack boxes of nutritious foods for low-income seniors, to the dedicated WIC employees who have remained open for families with children under the age of 5, to our volunteers and restaurant partners who ensure that meals are available for those experiencing hunger, to our service coordinators and our professional counselors who continue their vital work in innovative ways, to our food pantry staff, and to all those who work at Catholic Charities Call Center, finding solutions for every person who reaches out to us for help. Charity is at the heart of all you do, and we salute you.
People always say, how can you spend your day with 3-year-olds? Seeing the changes that they go through and just the journey and how they grow, this is a very rewarding job. Even though at the end of the day, we're not the highest paid people on earth. And when I have a parent contact me and say, my child loves school, that to me, I'm setting that foundation for their love of learning. Because really, you are changing lives. You are molding lives.
Shape the next generation of leaders. Teach. Apply today at archchicago.org/schooljobs.
At Catholic Charities, we want to remind you that we are here for anyone who is a victim of domestic violence or anyone who has a concern about someone they think may be a victim. Domestic violence affects millions of people each year, both women and men, of every race, religion, culture, and economic status. It includes physical, psychological, and emotional abuse, inflicted in both subtle and overt ways. The impact on children can be devastating. If you or someone you know are victims of domestic violence and you are looking for a place for healing and recovery, call us at 773-935-3434 in Cook County and 224-430-4977 in Lake County. A safer, happier tomorrow can begin today.
We're back, WNDZ 750 AM, Catholic Chicago, 312-255-8408. You can go to youtube.com/Catholic Chicago with Charles Heinrich.
I got to say, Mark, just during the off the air, just what Charles just said.
Oh.
He was trying to look stuff up about me in the college seminary.
Poetry and
he said,
the arts.
Was so good at poetry. I said, Charles, you got the wrong guy. I think I missed that day of class.
Well, here's a piece of trivia that probably is not in the archives, but when we were there as students, we did the first non-equity production of Godspell.
I have that program.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Were you in it, Mark?
Yeah.
What did you play?
I played the guy that sang "We Beseech Thee, Hear Us."
No kidding.
I forget the name, but he had different names for the
Now
characters.
tell us a story about the pool.
Yeah. Now I don't know if this is accurate or not, but this
might be
was
legendary.
This was
Tall tales.
This was folklore in our day, as you went down Stritch Hall, down this big room, into the tunnel to go to the gym, that was where the pool was when it was an orphanage. And we were told, and people heard it, when you walked through, every once in a while you'd hear a voice because one of the orphans drowned in that pool.
And in my 4 years there, I mean, I spent many times going from the building to the gym underground to play basketball and would work on the weight room. And but I never heard that story about possible voices because of a drowning from the orphanage. I didn't know there was a pool down there.
Yeah, there was. Well, did you find that or not?
I didn't see any specific stories or ghost stories, but I wasn't looking for them.
Okay.
But now, does your archival material speak much about when it was the Polish industrial orphanage?
We have materials from the St. Hedwig's Orphanage. That's its own separate collection.
Gotcha.
So we have materials about that and some things about the buying of the orphanage for the use when that happened in the 1960s when they bought the building from the St. Hedwig's
That'd be fascinating.
group.
I haven't talked back when I talked about the wrecking ball coming. About 10 years later, I was actually talking to a guy somewhere who was part of the crew that tore the building down in 1994, and he said, Father Greg, when we were smashing that building, the walls were 14 inches thick.
Oh, yeah, it was built like a fortress.
It was built like a fortress back in 1910, complete. He said, we were amazed at how much work we had to do to get it down because he said those walls were thick.
Well, see if you have any recollection or opinion when I say a few names of the rectors. So Archbishop John Blasney, he is Archbishop in Winona, then Portland. He was rector. Anything on John Blasney?
He was rector. He was actually rector for only briefly in Niles. I think it was right before you came on as faculty, Father Greg, because he was in 81 to 83.
That is correct.
I believe. So it seems almost like he came to Niles and then got immediately promoted to bishop afterwards.
Because he was followed by Father McLaughlin,
yes,
who came in 84. No, he came in Niles in 84. And Bob left in January of 90 to become the rector of Holy Name Cathedral.
Yes.
What did you learn about him? Anything pop up?
Father McLaughlin, he was very, that's obviously when you were on faculty. I read a lot of his newsletters where he's talking about
Red Square.
Yes, the Red Square.
Guess what? I gave that name.
Oh, really?
I was part of the communications team, and he wanted to do a weekly column or a monthly column in the newsletter. And I said, what about the name Red Square?
And he kept that at Cathedral, too.
Yes, he did.
I'd wondered if that was because it was a nickname or something.
Yeah, his nickname was Red.
Were there any notes on him calling Father Greg in for disciplinary actions?
No, that would have been Father Bill Goddard.
Yeah.
What
about Bill Goddard?
You know, he was the second rector of Niles College. He's definitely a kind of a shift in tone. He's a lot more reserved and quiet than the first rector, Monsignor Eugene Lyons. But he also was coming at the very tail end of like that wild, or rather that very like chaotic period I was talking about before the break of the 1960s.
Father Goddard started in 71 when I was a freshman.
Yes.
Monsignor Lyons had just left.
Yes, to become pastor of Faith, Hope, and Charity in Winnetka.
Anything on, and this is an interesting
one. Look at one photo of Cleet Kiley.
Yeah, we have on the screen a photo of Cleet Kiley.
Father, I'm going to go back. Father John Canary was a student there.
Yes.
And he worked for Father Stan Rudke.
Yes.
And he was rector, then eventually rector at Munline. One of his jobs was to, there they are, take the chorus and the orchestra. And he had a dream that they could be an orchestra hall. So I don't know if there's anything on that, but John Canary was instrumental in making that happen. So they did the War Requiem. They premiered it in Chicago, down at Orchestra Hall. But John Canary, anything on John Canary?
John Canary's name pops up all over student government, a lot of other different student writings and things like that. He was a very active part active part of the seminary life, and later, taking on more and more responsibility.
Right.
Father Stan Rudke, he was such a huge.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I guess you could call him the local star of Niles College, just because of the amount of musical performances that he headed, whether at the Lyric or the Orchestra Hall or things like that. He turned the Niles Choir into quite a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah,
oh my gosh, look at that.
Greg had a solo at one of those concerts.
Yeah, it
it
looks like my first communion picture.
Is that Father Tom Hurley?
Yes, it is Father Tom Hurley.
Yeah, Father Tom Hurley,
as well as Father Greg. That's one of your articles out for the Niles.
Amazing! It looks like my first communion picture.
Now, you were a student, but you were a collar?
No,
I was when he was on the faculty.
That's when I was.
When you were
director.
on the faculty. I didn't take my glasses off.
Did you run across anything from the late '80s or early '90s about the summer festival?
Yes, actually, we have a lot of programs and some of the pictures.
Performing Arts Festival?
Yes, the
and
Performing
guess
Arts
what?
Festival.
That was under the direction of Mark Teresi.
Oh, was it?
He spearheaded that.
The idea was we were isolated in that corner at Toohey in Harlem, and not only people on the board, but the rectors wanted to open the place up. So that was like 5 weeks or whatever it was. It was on a Sunday. We invited the community. Here's a little side note. So Nick Blaze, who was the mayor, was not involved. He wasn't real thrilled with the idea. But he came the first week, and it was jammed. And all of a sudden, second week, he's in the front row standing up with his hat waving at people.
Never let a good opportunity go
Exactly.
Also, I just thought of it now. I think it was back around 1987. I organized a softball game between some of our students and faculty to take on Q101. The radio disc jockeys from Q101.
Oh, really?
103, Q101. And I remember that I organized that and think we
had a lot of fun, and we took a lot of initiative as students and as faculty.
It's amazing to me how many things the students were involved in, just going over the course of the collection. I mean, the student government itself was extremely active and prolific in writing, which comes as a surprise, to me nowadays. And between the art and the students themselves at the records were also very socially active, whether through the apostolate programs.
That's what I was just going to mention. We ran that program.
Yeah.
So the seminarians ran a program with 30-some parishes during the summer.
Yeah.
Interviewed all the parishes, placed the people, evaluated. Yeah, I haven't thought of that in years. But
it was a good one. Oh, before we've got about 15, 20 seconds, another piece of trivia you found about the seminary that's fascinated you.
That's fascinating to me. I think one of the most fascinating things for all of Niles College, again, you have that first rectorship of Eugene Lyons, and him having to put out fires during the crazy 60s, and that again to me that stands out as some of the most entertaining things. There's so much great stuff in the Niles College collection. People that want to go see it. Whether it's alumni.
Give us a phone number or a website.
Yes, the website is archives.archchicago.org, archives.archchicago.org. We have a contact page on there, and you can set up an appointment to come view the collection. We're very hopeful that people interested in the history of seminaries, the history of formations, will be able to see and learn more.
We need to bring it to a close. We're really running late here today. I want to thank in a very special way Archivist Charles Heinrich. Charles, thank you for joining us. It's been a great program. Thank also to Mark Teresi. I helped walk down this memory lane.
Yes.
Special
Thank
thanks
you very
to
much.
Clinton Cottrell and Michael May for the great work as producer engineers. To our listeners, God bless. Have a great weekend coming up.